Good afternoon, and thank you for your time. At the age of 21, I broke my neck in an accident, and I'm now completely paralyzed from the neck down. But since then, I qualified as a doctor, gained a PhD in disability equality, and an MSc in rehabilitation studies. I've been a trustee of two of the largest disability charities in the UK, and I'm currently a non-executive director of 3 large public sector organisations, as well as being a professor at the University of Southampton. From 1981, the time of my accident, until 2010, I was fervently opposed to assisted dying. I wrote extensively on the arguments against assisted dying, for fear of the impact that it would have on disabled people. I then joined the Commission on Assisted Dying, chaired by Lord Charlie Faulkner in 2011. On the basis of the evidence that we heard over 12 months, including monthly oral evidence, 1,200 written responses, specific commission research, and visits to 4 locations delivering assisted dying around the world, the evidence was clear, and so I changed my mind. I think for too long, we've denied disabled people the right to end their lives on their terms. And this is not only immoral, but it's also unethical. Palliative care physicians actively use continuous sedation, using very high doses of morphine to render a dying person unconscious until they die. There is no ethical difference between this approach and actively supporting dying people to end their lives at a time of their choosing, surrounded by their loved ones and friends. And I'm not alone in changing my mind. Earlier this year in April, a debate in the Palace of Westminster attracted 100 MPs to speak. 30 MPs have changed their mind over the last few years. Why, you might ask? Each of them have been touched by a family experience or a conversation that they'd had with their constituents, whose lives have been blighted by the unforgivable anguish, pain, and torment experienced through the intolerable suffering experienced by those that they loved who died. In addition, Lord Carey, the former Archbishop of Canterbury, said only 3 years ago, quote, "The moral and for me the Christian case for a change in the law is irrefutable. How can a country that cares so deeply for its people be so indifferent to those who are at the end of life, suffering indignity and intractable pain?" It's not just in Christianity. Dr. Taj Hargey, a Muslim academic and imam, said, "Forward-looking Muslim scholars and liberal theologians promote individuals' thinking that is relevant to the modern Britain. This religious focus embodies all aspects of human rights, including to die with dignity at the end of life, with assistance through an act of compassion." End quote. And Dr. David Grube, who practiced as a GP in Oregon before retiring, once opposed assisted dying. But he said recently, and I quote, "As more states have legalized assisted dying, and there's no evidence that has emerged that patients are being pressurized into the process, more people are becoming comfortable with the idea. I changed my mind." End quote. I now believe that the opportunity to celebrate our life, to say goodbye to the people we love, and to slip away peacefully on our own terms, avoiding unnecessary pain and suffering, should be a right enshrined in legislation. There's no hierarchy of human rights. The rights of disabled people are equally as important as the rights of dying people. I've been an electric wheelchair user for 40 years and enjoyed choice and control over my life. Disability activists, including me, have campaigned for this for many years. Yet it's some of those very activists, a very small number, who have considerable influence, who are now arguing that I should be denied that choice and that control at life's one most important event, the dying process. I'm not terminally ill, but one day I might be. I'm not scared to die, but I want choice and control over how I manage that. The UK and Ireland uphold a blanket ban on assisted dying, despite more than 80% of the general public supporting this. Support is similarly high amongst disabled people, if not higher. And I'm proud to be among that number and believe that a safe, compassionate, assisted dying law is long overdue. I know from all the evidence that transparent, safeguarded, assisted dying legislation and protections for disabled people can coexist and can work effectively. And there's international evidence to prove it. In Oregon, for example, a tightly restricted assisted dying law that I support has been in place for 25 years. A campaigning organisation, Disability Rights Oregon, has stated that it has never received a complaint of abuse or even attempted abuse under the legislation. And Disability Rights UK has recently dropped its opposition to such changes in the law. I also recognise that the current law contains far more risks for potentially vulnerable people, and that includes me and millions of other disabled people. We currently have no protections against coercion under the law. The reality is that prohibiting assisted dying doesn't make it go away, and there's currently no actively workable safeguards to protect disabled people from their fate. It simply forces dying people to suffer against their wishes or resort to unimaginable actions to control their deaths. This often happens in secret, without the possibility for open conversations or the exploration of other potentially beneficial options. Currently, for those few terminally ill people who can afford it and somehow manage to escape, there's Dignitas in Switzerland. But this involves putting their loved ones at risk of prosecution and often dying before they're ready. For those without the funds, which is the majority, some may be able to refuse treatment that's keeping them alive and be sedated while their disease consumes them or while they starve or suffocate. But this can involve a drawn-out death with no guarantee that suffering can be relieved. The only choice remaining is to take matters into your own hands. These deaths are often violent and painful, as I heard when I sat on the commission about a woman who drank 3 litres of bleach and took 7 days to die. This can involve multiple attempts and causes untold devastation to those left behind. Politicians need to fully understand how the current law is operating, openly vulnerable to abuse. If they are to make informed decisions about what is right for their countries and citizens, they need to evaluate the evidence. Personal choice, autonomy, and control are values that many disabled people hold dear. But claims by a vocal minority that all disabled people are opposed to a change in the law, as if we were a single homogeneous group, have caught many politicians' attention. The status quo on assisted dying is no longer sustainable. In 2018 in England, Mavis, who is 80, helped her husband Dennis, 81, overdose in pursuit of an assisted death to escape his suffering from terminal cancer. Mavis also overdosed as they lay hand in hand together. She recovered and was hospitalized. Dennis died. Mavis was in prison for 30 hours, still wearing her hospital gown. She endured an 18-month court case whilst grieving for her beloved husband Dennis until she was found innocent. After Dennis's death, only a few weeks later, 5,000 miles away in Oregon, Frankie and Charlie had been married for 66 years, and they died peacefully in their sleep. Frankie, aged 88, had unbearable heart disease, and Charlie had prostate cancer. They were dying, but they were able to take control by the legislation, so they took their medicine and died, once again, lying hand in hand, in love, in bed together. A study published in January 2021 about the UK looked at the views of disability rights organisations on assisted dying and revealed that only 4% of them have an official position that is opposed to a change in the law. Other jurisdictions around the world have had a civil, thorough debate, examined the evidence, and concluded that a change in the law on assisted dying is the right thing to do. The UK and Ireland are increasingly the outliers. Finally, please never forget, a terminally ill person requesting an assisted death is not choosing between living and dying. They're choosing between two different ways of dying, either enduring avoidable suffering or a peaceful death, surrounded by families and friends, celebrating life. Many people have changed their mind on the basis of the evidence that is irrefutable. I have changed my mind, so I implore you, weigh up the evidence, examine it carefully, and if you're thinking rashly, you will change your mind too. Thank you very much.